The most famous red drink in human history is not a modern invention born in a chemical laboratory. It is a 6,000-year-old medicinal powerhouse, engineered by the relentless heat of the desert. Long before artificial dyes and high-fructose corn syrup hijacked our glasses, a vibrantly tart, crimson brew was the defining beverage of empires. It was prescribed to royalty to rapidly cool the human body in the brutal Saharan sun, and it contained a biological battery of vitamins so potent that modern pharmaceuticals are only just beginning to understand its mechanics. Yet, if you ask the average American today where their fruit punch comes from, they will point to a plastic packet of flavored powder. We traded a deep, culturally rich, blood-red superfood for an imitation that offers absolutely zero nutritional value. But this plant did not disappear. It merely went underground, surviving in the backyard gardens of the American South and the Caribbean, waiting for a generation willing to reclaim it. That plant is Roselle, scientifically known as Hibiscus sabdariffa. Welcome to Ancestral Yields. If you believe that the best foods are grown and you want to uncover the lost crops of history, make sure to like this video and subscribe to Ancestral Yields. To understand the sheer resilience of Roselle, you have to look at where it was born. Botanical and archaeological evidence points to its domestication in the unforgiving expanse of the Sahel, the semi-arid region stretching across Africa just south of the Sahara, around 4,000 years before the Common Era. The plant evolved deep taproots to seek hidden moisture and developed a thick, waxy coating that protects it from intense ultraviolet light. As ancient trade routes expanded down the Nile River, the plant reached ancient Egypt, where it ascended from a localized survival crop to a staple of high nobility. In the courts of the Egyptian kings, the tart, ruby-red infusion made from steeped Roselle callus became legendary. It was known as carcade, famously dubbed the tea of the pharaohs. Ancient physicians prescribed it for a multitude of ailments. The profound sourness of the tea stimulates salivation, quenching deep desert thirst, while its natural compounds act as a mild diuretic and vasodilator, literally helping the body flush heat. But it was not just a cooling beverage. Egyptian and Sudanese herbalists prescribed it to soothe sore throats, calm digestive upsets, and treat what they described as ailments of the heart. The cultural footprint of this plant was so profound that to this day, in Egyptian and Sudanese culture, a traditional wedding or family celebration is incomplete without a toast of carcade, honoring a tradition that predates written history. Roselle did not arrive in the Americas through the funded expeditions of European botanists or government plant hunters. It crossed the Atlantic Ocean in the 17th century, hidden in the pockets, hair, and memories of enslaved West Africans. Thrown into the brutal machinery of the transatlantic slave trade, these men and women brought the seeds of their homeland with them. In the American South and the Caribbean, Roselle proved to be an ultimate survival crop. It thrived in the blistering heat, heavy humidity, and sandy soils where traditional European vegetables withered and died. For enslaved people, the plant was a vital tether to the world they had been stolen from. They recreated the beverages of their ancestors by steeping the hibiscus calluses, often mixing the brew with caffeine-rich cola nuts, another African transplant. This deep crimson brew became culturally monumental. In African-American tradition, the red drink evolved into a profound symbol of resilience. It became the defining beverage of Emancipation Day, now celebrated as Juneteenth. The dark red color serves as a solemn visual remembrance of the bloodshed and sacrifice of ancestors, while the intense, sweetened flavor represents the profound joy of liberation. Further south, in places like Jamaica and the West Indies. The plant adapted a new name, sorrel, steeped heavily with ginger, cloves, and rum. It remains the undisputed centerpiece of Caribbean Christmas celebrations today, a testament to agricultural defiance. By the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the United States government suddenly took an intense interest in this backyard survival crop. Florida's population was booming, and the new settlers wanted cranberry sauce for their holiday tables. But true northern cranberries require freezing winter bogs to undergo cold stratification. They simply cannot survive the sweltering heat of the Gulf Coast. Enter the United States Department of Agriculture and its discovery age. In the early 1900s, USDA plant explorers like P.J. Wester began publishing official bulletins heavily promoting Roselle to southern farmers. They gave it a highly marketable new name, Florida cranberry. When the fleshy red calyces of Roselle are boiled down, they release massive amounts of natural pectin and citric acid. The result is a thick, crimson jelly that is virtually identical in texture, color, and tartness to true cranberry sauce. In 1911, prominent horticulturalists like Clarence Kennerly were boldly declaring to the press that any land that would grow okra would grow the Florida cranberry. The USDA envisioned a massive, sustainable southern jam and juice industry, an agricultural empire that would rival the great, freezing cranberry bogs of Massachusetts, utilizing a plant that practically grew itself in the heat. When we put the Florida cranberry under a modern microscope, the lab results reveal that the USDA actually underestimated what it had. A standard 100-gram serving, about 3.5 ounces, of raw, modern cranberries contains roughly 14 milligrams of ascorbic acid. But when you look at high-quality dried Roselle callus, that same 3.5-ounce equivalent can yield up to 260 milligrams of vitamin C. That is nearly 9 times the antioxidant density of a standard orange. Beyond vitamins, Roselle is loaded with a potent anthocyanin known as delphinidin-3 sambubioside, the compound responsible for its bleeding red color. Clinical trials, including a landmark 2010 study published in the Journal of Nutrition, demonstrated that daily consumption of this sour tea lowers systolic blood pressure in prehypertensive adults by up to 11.2%. It operates as a natural ACE inhibitor, rivaling the efficacy of modern pharmaceuticals without the chemical side effects. If you plan to forage for wild hibiscus, caution is required. While true Roselle is distinct, its red stems can sometimes lead novices to confuse it with the castor bean plant, a highly toxic weed that also sports reddish stalks and thrives in similar warm climates. Always identify the distinct okra-like flowers and the deep red fleshy cups left behind after the petals fall. Furthermore, never harvest any plant growing near roadsides, utility lines, or commercial agricultural fields, as these areas are heavily blanketed in toxic herbicides and pesticides. If Roselle was so nutritious, so culturally significant, and heavily backed by the United States Department of Agriculture, why did the Florida cranberry revolution fail? Roselle fiercely resists mechanization. To harvest it, every single calyx must be hand-snapped from the stalk. Then the internal, marble-like seed pod must be manually pushed out or cored by human hands before the flesh can be boiled. Meanwhile, up north, cranberry farmers bypassed this labor trap entirely. By the mid-20th century, they perfected wet harvesting. By intentionally flooding their bogs and using massive water reels to churn the water, they knocked the buoyant berries loose, allowing them to float to the surface where millions could be skimmed up by machines in an afternoon. This collapsed the market price of red fruit. Then, in 1927, a man named Edwin Perkins invented Kool-Aid in Hastings, Nebraska. Suddenly, cheap, shelf-stable powders became available at every corner store. The labor-intensive tradition of growing, coring, and brewing real hibiscus in American households was quietly replaced by the convenience of a chemical packet. But this convenience came at a massive biological cost. To replicate the intense, tart flavor and vibrant crimson color of Roselle, corporations did not use plants. They used a cocktail of artificial flavorings, massive amounts of refined sugar, and synthetic petroleum-based dyes, primarily red dye number 40. Today, a standard serving of commercial fruit punch powder contains nearly 16 grams of added sugar, contributing directly to the modern epidemics of childhood obesity, insulin resistance, and metabolic syndrome. Furthermore, the synthetic red dyes used to fake the hibiscus color have been repeatedly linked by pediatric researchers and government health agencies to behavioral issues, including hyperactivity and ADHD-like symptoms in children. We traded a medicinal, blood pressure-lowering tea for a cocktail of sugar and crude oil derivatives. Fortunately, you do not need an industrial farm to bring this crop back. You only need a backyard and a little patience. Roselle thrives in USDA hardiness zones 8 through 11 as a perennial, where the long, hot summers mimic its African origins. However, growers in cooler zones 3 through 7 can easily grow it as an annual by starting seeds indoors on heat mats 6 to 8 weeks before the last spring frost. You can source high-quality heirloom Roselle seeds from dedicated heritage outlets like Annie's Heirloom Seeds or the Southern Exposure Seed Exchange. When moving them outside, give them plenty of room. These are not delicate flowers. They grow into massive, shrub-like bushes that can reach 6 to 8 feet tall and wide. So space them at least 3 to 4 feet apart in well-draining soil in full sun. The plant requires very little nitrogen. In fact, too much fertilizer will give you massive, bushy leaves, but very few flowers, while it is incredibly drought-tolerant once established. Providing consistent, deep watering during the hottest months will vastly increase the size and juiciness of the calices. You also need to watch out for root knot nematodes, a microscopic soil pest common in sandy southern gardens, which is why crop rotation is highly recommended if you grow them year after year. Roselle is strictly photoperiodic, meaning it only begins to aggressively bloom as the daylight hours grow shorter in late summer and early fall. Wait until the delicate pink flowers drop off, leaving behind a fat, bright red calyx. Snap it off when it is crisp and tender, and use a metal tube or an apple corer to push out the green seed pod. You can use the calyces fresh for immediate brewing, or run them through a food dehydrator at 95 degrees Fahrenheit until they are brittle. Store them in airtight glass jars, and you will have a year-round supply of the Pharaoh's tea. Because of its hyper-resilience to drought and poor soil, almost every tropical culture around the world has independently integrated Roselle into their national identity. In Mexico, it is the essential agua de Jamaica sold in every taqueria. In West Africa, it is proudly celebrated as bisap in Senegal and zobo in Nigeria. In Australia, pioneers embraced it as Rosella, highly prized for outback jams. Today, the American farm-to-table movement is sparking a massive revival. Heritage gardeners across the South are actively reclaiming the Florida cranberry as a localized, organic alternative to industrial fruit. As modern agriculture faces unprecedented droughts, Roselle's ability to yield massive amounts of antioxidants with minimal irrigation makes it a critical crop for a hotter future. Replanting Roselle isn't just about gardening. It is the resurrection of a stolen legacy, the reclamation of ancestral health, and a return to a biological masterpiece that industrial convenience tried to erase. If you enjoyed this video, Give it a like and subscribe to the channel. See you in the garden.